Senran Kagura Peach Ball is the latest spin-off genre adventure in the Senran Kagura franchise. As you may have guessed, yes, this is a pinball game. If you're unfamiliar with Senran Kagura, to put it bluntly, this is a lewd pinball game. Peach Ball was made by Marvelous and Honey Parade Games and released by Marvelous and Xseed on the Nintendo Switch in the summer of 2019. Although this is a pinball game, it does come complete with a story mode, and thankfully it's not entirely garbage. It's simple and really only exists as an excuse to justify the gameplay, but it's not offensively poor or padded out to the point where it becomes an annoyance to complete, unlike the last Senran spin-off, Senran Kagura Reflexions. This time around, some of our busty shinobi gals are at an arcade to take part in a fighting game competition. Before the competition gets underway, however, the girls find themselves coming into contact with one of Haruka's latest creations. A chemical of sorts that transforms the girls into animal girls. Yes, we are definitely in furry territory with this one, and though furry stuff doesn't do anything for me, the girls are still cute regardless. Following the transformation, 5 campaigns open up. Each campaign is 5 stages, and each one is relatively the same. You go through what's essentially the same story 5 times, but each time occurs from a different girl's perspective, as she goes about convincing each of her animal friends, one after the other, to get into the magical pinball machine to turn them back to normal. Why is it pinball to turn the girls back? Well, no excuse actually makes this part good or interesting. This is one of those things that's best summed up with because game. In short, only the magical Peach Ball can turn them back, and it just so happens that the ball is just the right size to fit into a pinball machine. I guess chucking the ball at the girls wouldn't work, otherwise we wouldn't have a game, so here we are. And although we do the same story 5 times, since it's done with different characters, most of the dialogue is different on each route, so it doesn't burn itself out too fast. The writing moves between boring and forgettable to funny, yet still forgettable, but it makes for an entertaining and easy enough to digest time waster. That said, you won't exactly be wasting too much time on story mode anyway. It's really hard to gauge exactly how long this game is, as it will come down to how fast you can beat each level. I would venture a guess though that 4 hours is likely an average runtime to complete all 5 campaigns. Now, what is the pinball actually like? Well, it's pinball. Though people have messed it up, it is a pretty hard thing to mess up. It's inoffensive, but definitely not above average. Take it from me, I don't want to brag, but where I come from when it comes to pinball, I'm kind of a big deal.
Controls are delayed on that one. It's not my fault.
Of course, you have your left and right paddles, and you also have the ability to shake the machine to change a ball's trajectory. Stages are loaded with gimmicks and bonuses to find, which can either boost your score, knock the girls out for a while, or grant you items. Some items are used automatically, and others are used at the press of a button. Items range from score multipliers, bonus balls, new lives, or psychic balls, which mess with your ball's trajectory. There's nothing crazy in the item arsenal, but it is a nice little addition to the gameplay. Each stage has 3 special missions to clear for extra bonuses, but there's a lot of small sub-missions, or rather sub-goals, that you can aim for throughout the level, which are displayed on the sidebar here. Periodically, the chance for Sexytime Minigames will come up, which you activate by hitting the girl with your ball. When this happens, you pitch a tent around the girl, no pun intended, and enter a small bonus stage with its own randomized goals. Usually these are just hitting whatever item is on the stage, though the 3rd time you trigger Sexy Time, you end up in the Super Sexy Time, wherein the target you need to hit is the girl herself. And yeah, this is the best you can hope for when you think of lewd pinball. At least in the lewd department it is. Sadly, in the pinball department, as I said earlier, it can definitely be better. Senran Kagura Peach Ball only has 2 boards, and they feel very much the same. The same gimmicks appear in both, and usually in the exact same place. Really, one board just feels like a stripped-down version of the other. The 2 boards are Spooky Shinobi Park and Peachland, which is called Kagura Land on the actual board itself. Spooky Shinobi Park comes in a few different graphic palettes based on the seasons, and with Peachland you can swap out the art on the centerpiece of the board and play the board at different times of day. Sadly, these don't do anything to change how it feels to play the boards, only how it looks. Each board only has 1 tier as well, which to me makes it feel like a big missed opportunity. It would have been cool to see new levels on the board unlocked through completing objectives. Levels that are equal quality or greater to the main main level, yet no such feature exists. Given this is a game, you could easily put the girl 2 to 3 levels up, and make her require so many hits at the end to beat her so she feels like a stage boss of sorts. But in saying that, I would also change how this game handled the win scenarios. To beat a pinball match, you need only complete the Sexytime Minigames 3 times in each stage. At the end of the 3rd match, the game ends regardless of how many balls you have left. This kind of put me off as I found myself wanting to keep going and see how high I could actually get my score. This often ended my playtime prematurely. It's not like I'm much of a score chaser, but I felt like I was being cut off before ever reaching my full potential. And where the score chart allows you to have 4 initials instead of the usual 3, I mean, I want to fill this thing in. You can select multiple balls, but they don't really feel like they make much difference. The only notable change to me, or rather the only one that felt like it mattered, was that some of them were harder to see than others. There's no options to play with heavier balls or anything like that, so every time you play these 2 boards, it always feels exactly the same, minus the randomized Sexytime Minigames. It does stay fun for a while and for what it is, but I feel like this whole thing is just too limited. If this was priced like Senran Kagura Reflections, I'd be more open to this, but given the $50 price tag, that's Canadian prices, 2 boards that feel nearly identical, and a campaign that's essentially the same thing 5 times with variations, no, this just isn't enough. I just don't get the pricing scheme for these spin-offs at all. I look at Peach Beach Splash that released around the same price, and it had way more in the physical package. That game was far more loaded with characters, stages, music, and unique graphics. I mean, it felt like a real full game. This is sadly a bare-bones pinball game, where the pinball is sadly below average for the genre. The lewd part of this pinball game is top tier. The pinball part is pretty down there. At the cost of admission, it puts this thing pretty down on the list of games worth buying for me. But let's take a look at some of the other offerings it has now. We of course have the dressing room, which is pretty well fleshed out. Most cosmetic items need to be bought in the in-game store, and buying them will take a while with the rate you acquire currency, but it's not unfair in some sort of Battlefront 2 way. It's a grind, but one that will give you a decent amount of encouragement to continue playing the game. The store is fairly well stocked, but it isn't amazing. At the time of recording this, the online store only offers downloads for soundtrack expansions, but you can definitely expect some costumes and stuff are coming as well. The diorama mode returns, and it's not something I care that much about, but once again I used it to create the thumbnail for this video. It's more powerful than it ever has been, and through messing around I got these great random shots of Yomi piecing at giant fans and clumps of hair, so enjoy those I guess. Intimacy mode returns and fully intact, and it's basically exactly the same as it was in the past few entries. You have the water gun and the hands to interact with the girl. Another mode I don't particularly care for, but I always check out at least once. I did happen to notice this time around that some of the physics and collision are improved over previous games. There's no more crossing body parts over each other like a pair of old shoelaces. Sound effects are fine and the OST is catchy, but some songs in the OST either show their inspiration way too hard, or sound too much like other popular things. And finally, the game runs great docked and undocked. Though the resolution in undocked mode is a little lower than I was expecting, it's not so low that it's worth making a big deal about. In the end, was the game fun? Yes, I do think it was, for however short a time the game lasted. Would I personally recommend it? If a short amount of fun is all you need and you've got a bit of cash you just want to blow, go for it. But I do think the price and the content far from match each other. What is here is small and inoffensive, but I most certainly do think at the asking price there should be more included. And I don't think it would be hard to include more either, but maybe that's just me. And unfortunately, or rather fortunately, depending on how you feel about this, that's all I'm going to say on Senran Kagura Peach Ball. If you guys like the video, you know the deal. Like, comment, and subscribe, and share the video if you can. Links to socials are in the description, as well as Patreon. If you really like the show, consider supporting it over there. As always, folks, thanks for watching.
Alright, you ready? I'm controlling this flipper, you control the other one. Hey, what happened?
It went down this way.